Hello, everyone. You're welcome to yet another edition of the Unity Africa Talk Show. My name is Elvis Boatin, and we're going to have yet another wonderful conversation. Just like we've always been having, right? On the Unity Africa Talk Show, essentially what we've been doing is look at you know um, African nations before the advent of the colonial masters, right? How did we govern ourselves? What kind of cultures did we have? What kind of food did we even eat, right? How were our society structured, right? And on today's Unity Africa Talk Show, on today's edition, we're going to talk about the Mali Empire. Let's get to know how did the Mali Empire come to be. But we cannot really do justice to this conversation on the Mali Empire without taking a look at the Ghana Empire. And when I talk about the Ghana Empire, I'm not referring to the present day Ghana. You know, we are talking about ancient Ghana, which is actually about 400 miles away from the present day Ghana. Sit back, participate, join this conversation, and let's have a fun time. All right, so I'll be right back after this brief clip. All right, all right, all right. Welcome back once again. So before we went for the short clip, I was talking about the fact that today we're looking at the Mali Empire, and that we cannot really do justice to the Mali Empire in terms of this conversation without really looking at the Ghana Empire. And I also did mention that when we talk about the Ghana Empire, we're not talking about the present day Ghana, right? That's situated in West Africa. We are talking about the ancient Ghana Empire. And why is it really important for us to even look at the ancient Ghana Empire? It's very important because the Mali Empire actually came out of the Ghana Empire, right? And so it's very, very important for us to just give that bit of history or that background, as it were. So when we talk about the Ghana Empire, it is one empire that was really, really prominent, right? In the history of West Africa, and that is because they, to start with, they were strategically positioned, right? So the ancient Ghana Empire was in the Sahel region, right? And of course, being in the Sahel region, up up in the north, they were somewhere between the savannah and also the northern part of Africa, and that positioning alone kind of puts them in a kind of advantageous place, right, in terms of trade. So they actually served as middlemen between the people who were living in the savannah and, of course, the north. So they were able to gain access to camels. And I must really say that camels in those days were like sheep, right? That sheep in modern times. So you cannot really engage in trade. You cannot engage in exporting, if I could use that expression, or you can't really, you know, um, have interactions with your neighboring nations without having camels, right? So that positioning was really, really advantageous, and not just that positioning, right? The Ghana Empire, the people of the Ghana Empire were very good with metallurgy, so they could actually like use irons to make tools, which of course made them very, very powerful. So imagine the set of people who are well gifted, with they could use their hands to craft different weapons, and all that. They were set, they were good to go, right? So with their weapons, they could advance into other neighboring nations to conquer and to conquer territories. And so the Ghana Empire really grew and became very, very big. Not just the fact that they were good with weapons, they also traded in salt, they traded in agricultural products, and they also had a lot of gold. More to this is the fact that they also controlled the trade routes. So those were factors that actually made them very, very powerful, right? And as a powerful nation, well positioned, they kept conquering territories. They had a lot of weapons, and so they just had a lot of resources and became very powerful. This also opened them up to different people coming from different places to come and trade, to come and intermingle, and of course that brought about cultural dynamisms and all that. Now, having established that foundation, it leads us to the conversation that we're going to have today, since we're talking about the Mali Empire. So in structuring today's conversation about the Mali Empire, we're going to look at, okay, what is the Mali Empire really about, right? When did it even come about? So historically, we can say that the Mali Empire came about in 1235, between 1235 to 16 CE, which was the Mali Empire was one of the most powerful West African states, known. And what really made it powerful is because of wealth, right? And looking at where the history of the Malian Empire, or better put, where the Mali Empire emerged from, it's understandable when you start talking about the great wealth that the Mali Empire really had. They were also in a very good place, right, geographically, to grow their crops. And so, not only did they have a lot of gold, they also had a lot of cultural achievements, right? So, I mean, like, imagine that you have good ground. These were really blessed people, right? So you have good soil, which supported agriculture. You had gold, gold mines here and there, and you had expansive trade networks. So these were factors that combined to actually, inform to be responsible, as it were, for the wealth of the Malian Empire. So putting it all together, essentially the Malian Empire started in 1235 to 16 CE. And so the question is, okay, why did the Malian Empire even come out from the Ghanaian Empire, right? So those are some of the things that we're also going to look into as we engage, in this conversation. Today we're going to look at the historical background, and that's what I've actually done. I've given a bit of the history, right? We're going to look at the governance, how the societies was governed, the trade, how trade affected the economy, and of course, the advance of the influence of foreign culture. Because the truth is that we are really influenced by culture, right? And as we advance in our societies, as we advance as even individuals, right? We mingle with people, we learn from people, we trade, and not only do we trade in goods and services, we also trade in ideas and in experiences and culture. And the good thing is that when we allow ourselves the flexibility to absorb the good sides of the cultures of the people that we interact with, it puts us in a better position to have a richer culture, right? And that is exactly what happened even with the Mali Empire. Now, sometimes, when we look at history, sometimes we really um, talk about the Guagadu people. The Guagadu people are essentially they were essentially part of the Ghana Empire. As a matter of fact, the Ghana Empire wasn't the original name of the Ghana Empire. It was the Soninku people. They called themselves the Soninku people. But then foreigners who came to trade, especially the Arabs, were the ones who called them the Ghana Empire, which actually referred to the kings, right? The kings that they had, and it's actually so because it was essentially a monarchy. So the political structure was a monarchy, and it makes a lot of sense, just like most African nations, right? Because before most of those African nations became empires, they were in clans and little kingdoms here and there, where the king was supreme, right? But as they conquered more territories and became bigger, there was a gradual shift of the centralized monarchical system to a somewhat federally structured kind of political structure. These are some of the things that we're also going to look into as we proceed. Now, so that is a bit really about the Ghana Empire, and how that the Mali Empire also emerged from the Ghana Empire. So how did this happen? We cannot really talk about how the Malian Empire came out from the Ghana Empire without talking about the Battle of Karina, right? So in the Battle of Karina, the leader or the founder of the Mali Empire, who is called the Sundiata Keita, was actually the person who fought, right? He fought the Sotho people, and he actually had absolute victory. He had absolute victory, and when he had absolute victory, he took over, which actually was the beginning or the birthing of the Malian Empire. So let's put it all together. So once upon a time, there was the Ghana Empire. The Ghana Empire grew and became very mighty. They conquered more territories, and became very powerful, right? And with time, they because became very, very powerful, the tendencies are that they will conquer more territories, and they conquered more territories. Nobody wants to be conquered. Nobody wants to constantly keep paying taxes, right? So the Soso kingdom, was actually part of the conquered territories by the Ghana Empire. Now, when the Ghana Empire weakened with time, the Soso Empire took advantage and conquered the Ghana Empire, right? And when the Soso Kingdom conquered the Ghana Empire, they took over everything. And when Sundiata Keita, came of age and mobilized military might and decided to take over, what was rightly his because he was a prince, right? And when he was born, he had disabilities and he couldn't walk, and so he, as a matter of fact, he had a very tragic growing up story, and it's really instructive because it's not really about how you start, it's about how determined you are in the process of life, and what you eventually become. So Sundiata Keita had a very challenging beginning. Growing up, he couldn't walk, until he was advanced in age, and his brothers, of course, he was in a polygamous home. His brothers were killed, and so he had to go on exile. You know, as a matter of fact, like one of the should I say miracles that happened was that because he almost looked like a dead person and he could not even um, walk when his territory was conquered, they just spared him and all his brothers and most of the people in his territory were actually killed. So what really saved him was even his predicament, as it were. Now, when he went on exile, he was able to. He came of age. Came to the point where he was able to walk, and he was able to mobilize an army with great generals who were later going to come and fight to redeem his kingdom, as it were. So, in terms of origins, we know that okay, the Mali Empire was founded by Sundiata Keita, which was during after the Battle of Karina. This happened about 1235 CE. Now, looking at the map that is on my slide, you can see here that the Mali Empire, there's something striking about the Mali Empire and most other empires in West Africa, and that's the fact that people in those days always gravitated right towards the Nile River, which is very important because the Nile River, supports agriculture. So even though there was gold, they didn't just depend on gold, and it's one of the challenges that we have in even the modern world where a nation will have different resources, but then they do not diversify, the economy. So they just concentrate on one type of natural resource. But what we see from the story of the Mali Empire, which just came out from the Ghana Empire, is the fact that they had gold, they had trade routes, but they also made use of agriculture. They tilled the ground, to get the best out of the agriculture because the soil was good. So the then Mali Empire was actually like if you're looking at Mali Empire in modern time now, this is where it's occupied by Mauritania, Senegal, and Guinea, as it were. So when we are talking about political structure and governance, right? I did mention earlier on that the Mali Empire was essentially a monarchy. It had a very strong centralized leadership, and of course the king was called Mansa. So the leadership was it had a very centralized leadership because it was a monarchy, and with time, as they conquered more territories, it became necessary for them to have leaders in the different territories that they were conquering. So it's more or less like having a federal system, moving from a monarchy, right, which was highly centralized, and moving into a more federal kind of structure where you have other states and governors governing the different aspects of the territories, as it were. So the governance actually became decentralized with regional governors, but ultimate power actually was resided in the Mansa, or in the king, as it were. There is no economy that can thrive without trade. There's no human being that can prosper without trade. Essentially, we are made to trade. We are made to exchange something for something, whether it is a talent or whether it is a skill. And this can be seen throughout history, right? And looking at the Mali Empire and how the Mali Empire even evolved, we see how that they evolved and became very powerful politically because they were actually powerful economically. So there is a tie between political power and economic power, right? And even cultural and societal power. So the pathway to power, is through economy. So I think that um, in terms of priority, one of the things that as individuals and as nations and as groups of communities we should do is to see how we can grow our economic power, because it serves as the bedrock for political power or any kind of power, and ultimately for influence. And I dare say that the bottom the foundation for this power is actually trade, right? Whether you're trading a service, you're trading a good, or you're trading whatever you have, that you have to give in exchange for what you don't have, right? That has to take place for you to gain power. So the Mali Empire, so they had major exports, right? And when you talk about their major exports, you were talking about, you know, um, gold. Gold was a major export in the Mali Empire. They had gold. So I actually thought my slide was showing, but I'm not sure it's showing because of the network. Okay. I think. All right, so just a minute. So, Mr. Kenneth, thank you so much. Insightful Mali Empire out of Ghana Empire. Oh, okay. Thank you very much. So I have Mr. Kenneth online commenting that Mali Empire out of the Ghana Empire. Yes, the Mali Empire came out of the Ghana Empire. And some people actually are of the opinion that the current day Ghana, is not in any way related to the ancient Ghana Empire. In as much as that is true, arguably, I am personally of the opinion that they're related, because the last time what we had a conversation about the Ashanti Empire and how the Akan people came all the way from Egypt to the Sahel, then they moved towards West Africa. It makes a lot of sense that the nations of Africa, as we have them now, have actually migrated from different places, right? And because the Akan people were very adventurous and they were always conquering territories, it could, there is a high probability, even though it's not really on record historically, but there's a high probability that even the Akan people, who finally settled in the present day Ghana, might have actually come from the ancient day Ghana. But yeah, thank you so much. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kenneth. The slides are okay. I was thinking that my slides weren't showing. All right, so if you are just joining this conversation, wherever you're joining from, please engage in the conversation by putting a comment, putting saying hi in the comment section. We are talking about the Mali Empire, and what we've been able to establish so far is the fact that to do justice to this conversation about how the Mali Empire came to be, we kind of went back into the Ghana Empire, right? You know, talking about how the Ghana Empire came to be and how that they prospered through trade, through gold, through the exchange of salt, and the fact that they had a lot of trade networks, right? You know, and I also did mention that the prosperity of any group of people, of any nation, is based on trade, you know, and that economic power is very foundational for us to gain influence and political power. And so, in anything that you want to do, I think that it makes a lot of sense to prioritize economic power, right? Because it is foundational for any form of power, be it political or otherwise. Now, we are talking about the economy and trade, right? You know, and what we are essentially saying here is that the major exports that the Mali Empire had was gold, they had salt, they had ivory, and they also engaged in slave trade, right? You know, and the gold is gold is really I feel like I should just digress a bit, right? I talk about gold. The ancient city states, you know, pre-colonial states, you know, measure their wealth, you know, majorly by the amount of gold that the nation had, you know, and this is before the the, the advent of fiat, you know, money, or like the cash as we have it, right? You know, so and so it's really important that okay, we consider in trade, we consider the things that are key to us and to measure on those things. So what are the things that are key? We need a skill to be able to trade, you know, and we need to be able to learn how to amass gold or amass wealth, right? You know, because in every trade there's cash flow, right? And you cannot have cash flow, you know, and sustain cash flow if you don't even have enough cash saved. So major one of the major things that actually made the Mali Empire very strong and successful was that they had gold, you know, which served as the means of exchange for trade, but they also had a lot of it, you know, stored up, right? You know, they also had salt, they had ivory, and they also engaged in slave trade. Now, another thing that served as a major boost to the economy was the trans-Saharan trade. In the Somali controlled key trade routes, you know, which actually linked North Africa to Europe to the Middle East, right? You know, and this speaks about the fact that as a group of people and as a nation, and you know, we need to intentionally build networks, right? Because you cannot just, even if you have a lot of goods and services to give, you cannot just have goods and services, you know, and give yourself the services. You need to network. You need to open your borders to other other nations so that they can be exchanged. As a matter of fact, you know, when I say this, what comes to mind is the Dead Sea. You know, when we talk about the Dead Sea is called the Dead Sea because it absorbs water. It takes water from all places, but it does not allow water to flow out. You know, and so this is really key because when you have an economy that does not export or does not create the right channels, you know, and networks to be able to give out what it internally manufactures, then it's going to be a dead economy. So the Mali Empire, you know, became powerful because they had things that they were trading with. They had they established trade routes. You know, they had good diplomacy to actually ensure that the people that they were constantly in communication with and in trade with, there was that harmony. There was that harmony. There was that good interpersonal skills that that sustained the trades that they were into, right? And of course, you know, when you build an economy that's based on trade and an economy that's based on not just trade but trade in gold and salt and ivory, you begin to have a lot of money, right? And so we begin to talk about the Timbuktu, right? Timbuktu is actually a territory also in the ancient Malian Empire. Timbuktu became a major center for trade, scholarship and Islamic culture. Now, why Islamic culture? Now, with trade, comes the people that you trade with. There's always exchange, not just exchange of goods and services, but it's also exchange of of ideas and exchange of cultures. And so when when the advent of the Arabs into the then Mali state, Mali Empire, as it were, also brought about, the robbing of the Islamic culture. So about 90% of Mali today, is 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 is, is, is actually Islam, right? But then Timbuktu, was not it's not just the religion, but also Islam didn't just bring a religion; they also brought education. Built universities, which actually um, also served as an attraction, a point of attraction for other nation states to come to learn, to get empowered, and so religion, education, with religion, with education, with trade, the economy was actually in a very good position to keep blossoming. And it's not surprising that the Mali Empire became that powerful, and by becoming that powerful, they also advanced their culture to the world, right? So if you can look at, if you can still see my slide, you can see the Great Mosque of Djeni, and the Sankore Mosque of Timbuktu, and this is beautiful architecture. We are talking about many, many, many years back, right? This is beautiful architecture, that the Mali Empire actually engaged in. So Islam, like I did mention, was introduced through trade, because most of the people that they were trading with, they were getting camels, you know, which served as sheep in the ancient times to move their goods, from one location to the other. There was also a robbing off of the religion, which was predominantly Islam. Even though before the advent of the Islamic world, or before the mixing of Islam, the traditional Malians they were traditional people, as it were. So Islam, through trade, became a dominant religion, as it were, influencing governance, education, and of course their architecture, as it were. I did mention that from the picture, in the slide, education, the Timbuktu, mosque was not just a place of worship; it was also a place of education. As a matter of fact, it also served as a university where different people came to learn, and it became very instrumental in the advancement of the Malian culture. If we talk about art, and architecture, you can see that the art and architecture also finds reflection in the way that they built the university, in the way they built their mosques. It's a mix of the culture. It's a mix of the Islamic culture. It's a mix that also reflects the advancement, that existed then in the Malian Empire. Now, so far, we have been talking about how that the Malian Empire came to be, after they conquered the Soso Kingdom, you know, through the battle of the Katrina, right? And that, who is the person that actually led this battle? I did mention earlier that it was Sundiata Keita, someone who grew up having a lot of challenges because he could not walk. And I also did mention that it's not about your little humble beginnings, but it's about your perseverance and the fact that you're able to push through. Because Sundiata, as a matter of fact, his semi-physical predicament was a miracle, in the sense that when there was an invasion, of his hometown, and his people were killed, they actually spared him because he didn't look like a threat. He didn't look like any good thing was going to come out of him, and that very predicament actually became the saving factor, as it were, and made him to grow and to become a very prominent person, as it were. All right. Okay, so I have a Winning to Africa. Okay, so that's a slide, from Winning to Africa about the Akan Empire. Um, so I have Elizabeth Boatin joining. She says, interesting conversation. Thank you very, very much, Elizabeth, for joining the conversation and for being online and for putting your comments out there. Very much appreciated. Very much appreciated. All right. So we cannot talk about the Malian Empire without really even throwing more light about Sundiata Keita, right? Because he is the founder of the Malian Empire, as it were. So being the founder, and the first emperor, so all these activities actually took place in the 13th century CE. He established the empire's foundational political and social structures, and when I say this, it brings to mind, the founding fathers in other West African nations, as it were. It's not just gaining independence, but writing the constitution, laying down the foundation that other nations, that your the nations that are going to succeed you, or the kingdoms that are going to come after you, are going to actually, build the society on. So Sundiata Keita, after founding the Malian Empire, also like laid a good foundation about the political structure, how were they going to be governed, right? He brought about freedom. People saw him as a leader who was who gave them freedom to exist, freedom to be who they were, and freedom to also engage in trade, and also to become all that they needed to be in a free society. So Sundiata Keita often, was also referred to as Lion King, right? And not just in the fact that he was able to conquer, but for the fact that he had that big heart, that was also welcoming, which was very key in welcoming people from different parts of the then world, into the Mali Empire to actually engage in trade. So it's not just having good products and services, but also having the right character, and the character that commands attention, so that people are drawn to you because of your personal charisma, to be able to want to do trade with you. So those were some of the characteristics that Sundiata Keita also had. He was born in 1217 and was physically challenged, like I did mention, but that was not a deterrent. He bypassed that, he outgrew that, and he became the mighty man that he was in the history of West Africa. And we can talk about Mali Empire without really talking about him, because he's really the father of the Mali Empire. So in delving more into his life, we can establish that, okay, first of all, he came from the Keita dynasty, and he was the son of Mandinka king. Of course, he was a prince, who, because of his physical challenges, could not ascend the throne, right? And so he had to go on exile. And when he returned, he returned with he mobilized people. He returned with a stronger army, and he was able to fight the Soso kingdom, which had dethroned the Ghana Empire. And he was able to birth the Malian Empire. And this is also very key and instrumental, in the sense that it is okay to be weak, but we must also be very determined to outgrow our weakness. And one of the fundamental ways of also outgrowing our weakness is that we recognize our weaknesses, and we are able to see how we can leverage on the strengths of other people. Because when he returned with major generals, and so he didn't just return to fight a battle by himself. He returned, with mighty men, which served as even a very strong backbone. And with this mighty generals, he was able to fight. So in 1235, Sundiata led a successful campaign against the Sumaroro Kante, at the which of course I did mention earlier, in the Battle of Karina, where he defeated the Soso army and marking, the beginning of the Malian Empire. Sundiata ruled, after he founded the Malian Empire until his death in 1255. And so when he died, his nephew took over, and so we we start here. So that's where the story of Mansa Musa started. Mansa Musa, is he is he is actually like the wealthiest man ever lived, right? Mansa Musa is the wealthiest man ever lived, and there are many reasons, right? We've established the fact that the Mali Empire was was in a place like there was a lot of gold. They had trade routes, to the Middle East, to Europe, and to other neighboring nations, and they also had they had good ground which served as which helped with the agricultural products, right? So they were very, very powerful economically, politically, and otherwise. Now where Mansa Musa was the person who actually put the Mali Empire, on the global map, right? Where people started knowing about how wealthy the Mali Empire was, right? So his pilgrimage, his Hajj, in 1324, where he displayed, Mali's wealth, and boosted gave a global recognition to Mali. Musa made his pilgrimage between 1324 and 1325. His possession was reportedly um, um, like, okay, so this is someone who goes on pilgrimage to Hajj. He goes for Hajj, right? And he takes with him 60,000 men. 60,000 men, and the 60,000 men, all of them were wearing brocade. Now, brocade back then was an expensive, dress, an expensive, attire to wear, So he carries 60,000 men, all wearing brocade, and Persian silk, very, very expensive dresses, and he also included 12,000 slaves. So these are some of the things that he did that actually put him that put Mali on a global scale. Like, those people had wealth, and they were more or less like, if you got to flaunt it, right? So 60,000 men, 12,000 slaves, and these 12,000 slaves, each of them had about like 1.8 kg of gold bars. So they had a lot of gold, and they were flaunting the gold, and the horrors, the slaves horrors, they were dressed in silks, bearing gold staffs, so the staff that they were even holding whilst they were going in front of the king was gold. Their horses were adorned with gold, their handbags were also like adorned with gold. So everything was gold, so Mansa Musa actually provided even all, and this trip that he went on, he provided all necessities for the procession. So the 60,000 people that he had, the slaves, everybody was provided for. So they served as a procession, to announce his journey, or yeah, his journey into Mecca, as it were. Try to imagine, taking care of this loss of people, right? Try to imagine their feeding, feeding this entire company of men. Try to imagine feeding the entire company of not just human beings but also animals, right? Those animals, also like included like 80,000 camels. Camels are not just like any kind of animals, because in the den world, right, like if you're talking about wealth, if you're talking about wealth, you're really talking about camels, because camels were very instrumental. Because if you're engaging in trades, you need to have like you need to be able to move your goods, from one location to another location. And because of the physical qualities of camels, the fact that they could go for a long period of time without water, they were, if you had camels who were really, really healthy, wealthy. And Mansa Musa, going to Hajj, actually had 80 camels, which each carried 20 between 23 to 136 kg of gold dust. So he carried lots of gold. He carried gold dust. Musa gave the gold to the poor people that he met. So just try to imagine it. So somebody is traveling to Mecca. In meeting poor people, he will give them gold. In meeting beggars, he will give them gold dust. And in addition to that, he was also trading gold for souvenirs. So gold was everywhere, and so that level of opulence, right, it was a reflection of how rich the Mali Empire was, and Mansa Musa was the epitome of that wealth. And the way he, as a matter of fact, even rendered the so with the lots of gold that he was actually distributing, every territory that he passed through, he rendered there was an effect on the economy, right? He broke the backbone of those economies, because we know that, okay, one of the causes of inflation is when there is too much money in circulation, right? And gold was actually money. And so imagine someone passing through your territory and exchanging a lot of gold, right? That actually kind of increased inflation and even kind of shook the economy of the ancient world. Okay, so let me check. So Kenneth Iguri says 60,000 men in silk and brocade. Yeah, really, really showing a lot of wealth. If you have it, flaunt it. And when I say if you have it, flaunt it, right? It's not in any way to be very careless, but what I really see here is being intentional with your wealth, and more like kind of branding, right? Because more attracts more. And so if you position your country, position your economy, or position your community as a beggarly community, then people don't want to. It's just a natural thing, right? People don't want to really get so much involved with you. People don't want to really talk serious business with you. So it's really nice for us to be intentional about our wealth, and how that we can use wealth to create the right image on a global scale, so that people want to do more business with us. So essentially what I'm just saying is that more attracts more. The more you have, the more you will receive, and the more people want to be part of what you are into, right? And I think that to a very large extent, you know, Mansa Musa was able to do that. That audacious display of wealth, made other people to be interested in this Mali Empire. What are they really all about, right? And they were also able to have an increase in trade, as it were. All right. So Ms. Kenneth says, looking back, can we say this was quite some waste? Could they have seen a clearer vision of the future? Very interesting, right? Very, very interesting. So I think it's a two-sided thing, right? Um, what could have happened? What happened if they had actually saved some? What happened if they had maybe, because eventually, right, the Mali Empire started declining, right? And so saving having a culture of savings is really, really key. For the most part, a lot of people want to have a lot of money before they start saving. Then we also have the extreme set of people who have a lot of money, and they have the mindset that the money is never ever going to finish, right? Because they just feel like whatever they are enjoying is going to be like that forever, right? And so that sense that it's never, the wealth they have is never going to finish, does not make them to invest, or to save, and to invest, so that wealth has, so that there's that cash flow, right? So I absolutely agree with you. Looking at there was a lot of display, of wealth, right? And because that's because gold was in abundance, and the sources through which they were getting this abundance, was didn't look like it was going to diminish, right? And so I think that they could have actually handled it with a bit more of vision, right? So that is one part of the argument. Another part of the argument is also that we Africans, and we little communities here and there, we need to create that balance between having and not having, for the most part, we are usually on two extremes. So we see the extreme of people who have, and they waste it, and they want the whole world to know how much they have, and how they do that is by wasting it and spending the resources on things that are not needful, just to show off. Then we also have the other extreme of people who do not have, and portray themselves as beggarly communities and beggarly nations, and so they are always dependent on the little droppings here and there from other nations. So those are two extremes that I think are harmful, and I think that with the benefit of, and which is part of the interesting, which is what I mean, what makes this conversation very interesting, right? Because we are looking into the past to see how we can even position ourselves in modern times, in a better way. But what is really interesting is the fact that we as Africans have had a rich heritage, and so this could help to kind of shape in our minds, that okay, we are not poor and we are not beggarly because we have a rich heritage, and that can serve as a source of confidence to say, okay, if we have been there before, then we can trace back, we can do it again, right? If we African nations were that wealthy, then we don't really have to, we can look inward, right? And see how we can build our wealth again. But we need to create that balance of not putting ourselves as beggarly people on a global in the global scheme of things, always dependent on outsiders. We need to look inside, because the greatest resources that can actually put us on a global scale lies on the inside. So yes, I absolutely agree. But we need to really create that balance, like Mr. Kenneth said in the comments. All right. So let's make some progress, right? So let's okay. So that is that about Mansa Musa, right? So let's talk about the decline of the empire, right? Which is exactly what we're talking about when I was reacting to Mr. Kenneth's comments, right? Um the there's this saying, right, that when and this cuts across history. When a nation gets to its peak, it's as good as it's just about to tip, and have a decline. As a matter of fact, when the apple is ripe, or when the mango is ripest, it's actually at the point where it's indicative of the fact that, decline is just right about the corner, right? And so when we get to the peak of our career, when we get to the peak of our lives, we must understand that at the point where you're getting to your peak, you are just very close to a point of decline. Now, in business school, we're taught that, okay, when you get to that, when any business, right, gets to the peak, you need to like reinvent the business. You need to reinvent the economy, because when the economy is at its peak, when the business venture is at its peak, and you're not innovative to reinvent it, then there's going to be a decline, right? And looking at the Mali Empire, unfortunately, they got to the peak, a peak of wealth, but then there was a decline because they were not able to reinvent themselves, right? So there was a decline. And so, what are some of the key reasons for the decline? So there was an issue about succession, disputes. There were issues about, okay, so who should succeed who, and all this internal fight here and there actually weakened the empire, faced a series of internal power struggles, and conflicts over succession. Okay, so and after the death of the of powerful leaders, especially following the reign of Mansa Musa, and between 1312 and 1337, we had like weak rulers, and there were like infightings among royal, factions of the community, which undermined the stability of the central government, making it difficult to maintain control over the vast empire. Like I did establish earlier on when we started this conversation, that before the Mali Empire became that powerful, when it was a monarchy, but then as they grew and they became bigger, and conquered more territories, they moved from a monarchical system, which was centralized, to a more kind of decentralized system of government, a somewhat federal structure, kind of where absolute where power, there was power in the central government where the king was, but then this power was also given to the different territories, spread all over, exercise on behalf of the central government, as it were. But then usually when we have powerful kings and powerful leaders and powerful figures in society, people like to associate with us powerful people, but not necessarily learning their principles, so as to sustain, the economy, and so as to sustain the culture. And so when these powerful leaders, exit the platform, the people who take over them are not, they don't have the principles to sustain the quality of life that these leaders had. And that is one of the things that also happened. So when Mansa Musa left the scene, the leaders who took over didn't have the character and the strength and the wisdom, to be able to handle things the way this great leaders did. And that was a major factor that contributed to the decline. Another thing was the decentralization of power, right? So in as much as it was really good that there was decentralization of power, I think that when you two factors, right? When you are it is good to give our power, but then you need to be sure that the people that you're giving power to are loyal, and by loyalty, I'm not really talking about sycophancy, but I'm talking about loyalty that is born out of loyalty to the process. People that have gone through process, people that have learned, what it takes to sustain an economy, that have learned what Oh, I think my connection disconnected. So essentially, I was talking about the fact that the centralization of power was one of the major causes of the decline of the Mali Empire. It's not because the centralization of power is wrong, but then who do you give power to? Who do you bring close to you to succeed you, right? Who do you expand your territory with? Right? And so it's hard time that we started looking at loyalty from just lip service, and sycophancy to people, to discipleship, people who are loyal to the process, people who are loyal to the principles that made the leader, right? And so and that was a lacking factor in the then Mali Empire. So as the empire expanded, of course, it became increasingly difficult for the central government to manage such a vast and diverse territory. Local governors and provinces, gained more autonomy, which really essentially wasn't a bad thing. Often refusing to send taxes to or troops to the capital. And that weakened, the unity of the empire. And that principle is what made me to say that as we expand in business, as we expand in community, we need to expand with people, who are loyal, not loyal to us, but loyal to the process, loyal to the principles that sustain us, loyal to growth, right? And when if people are growing and they understand the principles that we stand on and stand for, then they will not sabotage the central system, right? And so decentralization was one of the major causes of the decline of the Mali Empire. There was also economic decline. The Mali Empire, the economy was largely based on the control of the trans-Saharan trade routes, particularly gold and salt, and so when there were alternative trade routes that started opening up here and there, which of course reduced the the economic activities that were going on the trade routes within the Mali Empire. So other regions, especially the Songhai Empire, for instance, began to dominate trade. Mali's economy power started waning, and the power also faced competition from emerging coastal trade with European powers in the 15th century. Diverting wealth from the Mali Empire. So the economic decline, and it's really important that we are always abreast with the things that sustain us economically and look at different ways that we can solidify those principles, solidify how we are making money, solidify how we are building relationships, solidify how we are intentionally building networks, right? And not get to a point of complacency where we think that we have arrived. Because when we think that we have arrived, when you're at the peak, you are actually at the point where you are on top, you are just another step from a decline. And so it's very important that we are able to have that at the back of our minds, so that when we get to the peak, we have to intentionally revisit the principles that took us to the peak, so that we are constantly getting innovative, sustaining our success, as it were. Invasion, and military defeats were also part of the key reasons for the decline. These were societies that were surrounded by very volatile environments. And of course, when you are at the peak, you have a lot of wealth, you become the all eyes see you, right? And so everybody wants to bring you down, everybody wants to run you over, so that they can take what you have. And so with every level of wealth you display should come with a level of responsibility, to making sure that, okay, you're not just displaying wealth, but then you have enough security to sustain it, to protect yourself against external aggression. Because for every wealth that you display, when people see that wealth, they want to be like you, right? They want to, and in trying to be like you, not necessarily like from learning from you, they actually want to overthrow you. And so this were some of the things that actually like led to the decline of the Mali Empire. The empire suffered from repeated, external invasions, from the left, right, center. And when you're constantly invaded, you're constantly, like your military might is constantly depleting, and waning, as it were. So this military, attacks were particularly from the Tuareg and the Mosi people. The most significant military defeat came in the 15th century, when the Songhai Empire under the Sunni Ali, and later Asika Mohammed seized control of the important cities such as Timbuktu and Gao. It's really, really important, because this is the place of not just wealth, but of education and of culture and of religion. And when they took over, they took the very soul of the Mali people, which weakened their commerce and their culture, and that was the major blow, which led to the decline of the Mali Empire. Environmental factors too. So environmental factors, like degradation of the environment, also played a role in the empire's decline. Over, like I did mention earlier, that the Mali Empire did not just thrive in salt and in gold, but they also thrive in agriculture, right? And with time, nature just played out a first one on them, because there was deforestation, and well, some legends believe that the deforestation was as a result of the Malian people refusing to pay homage to the gods, right? But I think it's just a factor of nature, right? So there was deforestation, and so because of that, they were not really thriving in agriculture. And I really dare say that it's good to have gold, but then when you have gold but you don't have food, then gold does not have so much value in your eyes, because I mean, you need to have food to stay alive, right? And so deforestation was a major factor, which reduced the agricultural productivity, of the empire, leading to food shortages and weakened population. Another factor that is important for us to also consider, that was a major decline to the Mali Empire, that led to the decline of the Mali Empire, was loss of key trade cities, right? So Mali's control over the key trading cities like Timbuktu, Gao and Djeni, were crucial. These were cities that were crucial for the wealth of Mali. And so with time, when they lost this trade routes, right, it was a major blow to their economy. And so that led to the decline of the Mali Empire. So by the 16th century, the Mali Empire had fractured into smaller kingdoms and lost its prominence as a major power in West Africa. And it's more or less like everything going back to the beginning, where from different parts came together to form this powerful kingdom, or empire. But then because of all these factors, and they were not able to sustain the wealth, sustain the culture that keeps a society, culture, the culture that sustains growth, because they were not able to sustain these things. There was a decline, in the empire, and the empire fractured, disintegrated into different parts. All right, so that is about that, about the Mali Empire. So I'm going through the comments. Um, okay, so Mr. Kenneth says on point with reinvention. On point with reinvention. Very true. We need to we are constantly supposed to be innovative, reinvent ourselves. Very true, Mr. Kenneth. Success without succession is failure in disguise. Very, very true. Very, very true. And I think that that is one thing that is lacking in Africa. So when we look at wonderful things that this wonderful history that we have, what really happened? There was a break somewhere in between, so we need to learn. Whether you are the CEO of a company, whether you lead a community of people, you need to learn on how to make sure that whatever you are, whatever principles you have, whatever you're bringing to the table that's sustaining and building that community, you need to see how it is passed on to other people. It's really, really important. It could have been better said. Let me put it out again. Success without succession is failure in disguise. Perfectly said. Perfectly said. Thank you very much, Mr. Kenneth. Build sustainable systems, not blind loyalty. Very true. Not just people who are, blind loyalty, people who are giving you lip service, right? But people who are loyal, not just to you, but loyal to the process, loyal to the system, loyal to the principle that you're putting in place for growth, right? Not people who just want to be seen as loyal to you, but behind your back, they don't represent the values that you represent. So these are people who play psychophancy, and they are not loyal to the process. They are not loyal to the principles that sustain whatever you're building. So very true, very, very true. Thank you so much. So build sustainable system, not blind loyalty. Thank you so much for the awesome comments. This has been a very wonderful interaction, and a conversation that we've had. Thank you for being a part of it. And if you join in the middle of the conversation, right? This is the Unity Africa Talk Show. My name is Yavas Boaten, and on this Unity Africa Talk Show, essentially what we've been doing is talking about African nations before the advent of the colonial masters. And today we've been talking about the Malian Empire. We've looked at their political structures, how the society, how the empire, was founded, and how they also came to a point of decline. And we have learned the more lessons from them. And so essentially what we are doing is not just have these conversations about to build a community, a community where we can share our history so that we can have that level of confidence, because we cannot put ourselves on a global scale if we don't even have the confidence to do that. And for us to have that level of confidence, we need to know where we are coming from. And when we know where we are coming from, then we can have the confidence that, wow, we have a rich history, and heritage, right? There's something on the inside. So we can look on the inside and bring out what we have on the inside, because truly, nations are built, economies are built when people look on the inside. And so what we are trying to do on the Unity Africa Talk Show is to look on the inside by tracing our history. It's been a pleasure having you join this conversation. Join us next week as we engage in and continue with other this same conversation, right? On the look at other nations, as it were. Thank you for being a very wonderful, wonderful, wonderful audience. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening.